Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and it's no secret that I play a lot of DPS specs. On this channel, I have been covering just about every single DPS update for just about every spec on the alpha, trying to make sure to voice my opinions and concerns at every single change that happens from Blizzard. I'm not really a healer main or a tank main. However, I do want to take a look at both of those roles. I'll take a look at how do healers feel on the alpha right now. I got a chance to try out all the different healers, and I don't really want to look at them from a simply numbers perspective, but rather a feel. How do they feel to play? Did Blizzard add them enough awesome tools in order to supplement certain specific roles? What is Blizzard progress with those specs so far? And mostly, do they feel fun, enjoyable, or engaging for someone who is, let's say, trying to get into the game for the next expansion, and you're trying to consider playing a healer? So let's get into the list of healers that we have to take a look at for today. For every one of the healers in this video, I at least ran through a few dungeons, so I at least have some group content experience, and I'll try to test out the specs in a variety of ways, going for more healing, going for more damage, and really just trying to get a feel for it. I'm not really here to tell you which healer is going to be the best. The alpha is getting constantly adjusted over and over, so I'm not going to tell you the numbers that are just going to change tomorrow or the next week. Instead, I want to talk about the feel, what feels fun, what feels good, and explain to you how each spec felt to play, not really to convince you to play one or the other, but just to tell you what my experience has been. And with this, we're going to start with Holy Priest. One of the things that every priest is going to get, and trust me, this one is going to be quite an interesting one, but all the priests are getting ability of Power Infusion. And I think already with that, we're going to have priests in every single raid situation, whether you're disc or holy, but holy brings quite a lot of healing numbers right now. Maybe they're overtuned on the alpha, who knows? Power Infusion is going to allow an ally, whether it's a healer, tank, or a DPS, a load of haste on a singular target. That's going to be quite a utility to bring overall. This prayer is available for all specs baseline, but that's nothing new for a Holy Priest. A lot of other damage and abilities have been added, like Mind Blast and Mind Seer and Shadow Lord Pain. So for a Holy Priest, you actually have quite a lot of tools for instant damage. Prayer Mending has also been changed to the rank 2. It's now in Instacast, making it a much easier ability for Holy Priests in a very mobility heavy dungeons and scenarios to get some more healing out. And for Holy Priest, Circle of Healing is now a baseline ability going from BFA into Shadowlands. What else did change? Well, not a lot. Holy Priest still is a juggernaut of a variety of different cooldowns to deal with just about every dungeon situation or raid situation. I'm telling you right now, Holy Priests probably have the most amount of tools. And this is the class that I could either be proactively playing or reactively. I felt with Holy I can walk into any dungeon scenario. Overtuned, undertuned, I was able to tackle it in any way possible. I have AoE healing, group AoE healing, target AoE healing, single target instacast, emergency healing, slow healing that's very mana efficient. I can go for fast heals for emergency heals, healing over time, heals that bounce, heals that spin in circles and sing songs for all I care. You heal with a variety of ways, and that's the power of a Holy Priest. And that's something that I retained in Battle for Azeroth, and I feel with some of the changes happening to classes in general in the next expansion, they feel quite strong and give you quite a bit of confidence in any PvE situation in the next expansion. I do wonder, with a variety of different DPS abilities that have been added to Priest in general, could Holy have a Holy DPS build? Maybe with certain legendaries, I wouldn't hold my breath for it, but I still think that would be quite cool, and definitely something the community is going to be messing around with. After checking out all the healers, like Discipline Priest, Holy Priest, the only thing you lack is mobility. So for mechanics where you have to do a lot of movement and you have to stand to cast heals, that's like the only healer that really doesn't have a lot of strong insta-cast heals that are more readily available on a shorter CD. That's the only thing I can really say that's kind of bad about Holy. But I think Holy's looking like a juggernaut, at least for now. Maybe that's just because it's overtuned on the alpha, and that's a possibility. But right now, Holy definitely ensues a load of confidence into the player, no matter piece of content, overtuned or not, that you're about to tackle in the alpha. The next healer we could talk about is Restoration Druid. It is the champion of Mythic Plus content, at least right now in BFA. But will it hold its title and maybe even be a little bit better in the next expansion? I want to talk about druids as an overall first. It seems that Blizzard is really trying to allow druids to be more hybrid. With certain tools returning like Heart of the Wild, druids should be able to stronger utilize certain aspects of themselves. Feral Affinity, Guardian Affinity, as well as Balance Affinity will be available for your Resto Druid. That comes with a free Typhoon and even a Incapacitate and Roar if you go for Guardian Affinity. Lots of crowd control potential, amazing for Mythic Pluses, and could be good in other situations as well. The healing for Resto Druid I think is still one of the easiest ones. It's a lot of healing over time. You put up HOTS and they do work. Right now in the alpha they seem to do good numbers, so nothing really feels too much like a struggle. But then again, some of the runs that I had were full of Death Knights, so Death Knights really do make some of the fights easier in some cases. Restoration Druid, I think, is going to be a Druid, and Druids are expected by Blizzard, at least right now in the alpha, to want to utilize other shapes. You are supposed to be more of hybrid. I don't think they're doing this whole focus on Druid rather than specs nearly as well as they're doing with Paladins, but at least they're trying to do something with it, so maybe with alpha it'll be more polished. Trust me, Paladins feel more like a Paladin rather than Holy Red or Prot, but Druids still have this identity of Resto, Feral, Balance, and Guardian ingrained more heavily than the Druid aspect. But Blizzard is going to want you to utilize other forms. For example, you're going to be given Iron for free, and they add a Ferocious Bite for Feral Druids if, let's say, you're Resto Druid and go in Cat form, that is now based on it as well. So Blizzard really does want you to experiment with other forms. And if you really didn't believe me prior, Heart of Darkness is getting added in the game, and they're really trying to make all those affinities much stronger. Just for picking a different affinity, you get different abilities. So as Restoration Druid, you have a baseline Ursul's Vortex. Go in Balance Affinity, it'll give you a Typhoon. Go in Bear Affinity, it'll give you Incapacitate and Roar. And go in Cat, it gives you Maim, which isn't quite as good, but the other options do sound quite good. And with Heart of the Wild, it'll increase your effectiveness outside of your role by a hefty amount. So, Resto Druids that want a DPS and Mythic Plus, rejoice! This will be probably the most used ability for you, unless you necessarily need Mighty Bash. The Return of Cyclone is going to give you a little bit extra crowd control to work with as well. Your Swiftment has been redesigned to be a little bit less of an oh snap button. The ability itself will now consume a healing over time on an ally, but it's a smart healing over time. So if you have a Rejuve, a Wild Growth, or a Regrowth, it'll first target your Regrowth and Wild Growth. It'll try to target one of your lesser HOTS in order to consume. So don't worry about loading the tank up with Rejuves or trying to figure out which order you should put up your HOTS for Swiftment to consume the right HOT. To supplement for this change, Nature Swiftness returns, which will give you an opportunity to instant cast a Regrowth, Rebirth, or Entangling Roots instantly for a slightly more effective version. This would give Restoration Druids that plan their HOTS a powerful Swiftment to still utilize like they would in the past, and now Nature Swiftness can really be used as an emergency button in a variety of cases. As a Resto Druid, you will now want to share, because Innervate is going to be an ability where at rank 2 you can use it on other people and gain 50% of its effectiveness for yourself. So when you use it on another healer, they have 100% mana cost reduction for 10 seconds. You will have 50% mana cost reduction, making Restoration Druids actually kind of wanted inside of raids, which should give them maybe a spot in order to play into the next expansion. Utility like Ironbark has its cooldown reduced ever so slightly. And with all these changes, I think Blizzard is trying to allow you a little bit extra healing output, especially if you pre-plan with your healing over time. And in the downtime, maybe Blizzard really wants you to go into Balance or Feral Affinity and really push out some damage. So the hybridness for Restoration Druids, but also the reward for playing the build the way it's supposed to, managing your HOTS and using emergency buttons if ever needed, you're going to be more rewarded for that type of play, which I think is a playstyle that really evolved in Mythic Plus dungeons, and Blizzard is really trying to pick up on the playstyles that other players have played. I'm pretty sure some of you will be able to just stand there and cast heals like the good old days, but Blizzard really does want for you, if you're playing this class, to shift around and try different things and really try out the wild side of the hybrid playstyle. The next class we'll be taking a look at is the Paladin, and I gotta be honest, I actually kind of enjoyed the offensive power that this class is going to be bringing. The Paladin's focus in Shadowlands is going to be to focus more on the class, the Paladin, and what they bring, given every Paladin, no matter what spec you are, kind of a very unique but also very same-y utility, so you can bring all those different tools whether you're a tank, healer, or DPS, which is a good thing, allowing Paladins to really retain more of that Paladin identity rather than a spec identity. A lot more abilities in terms of utility are getting brought into the class, and Holy Power is also going to have, like Prot, Return of Holy Power, but generating holy power is going to be not as difficult as you might remember. A lot of the talents between Holy Prot and Ret in certain rows are very same, but that gives, no matter the spec you are, a lot more opportunity to pick different builds for different situations, which could be quite interesting, especially if you want to play a hybridized build, like a Retribution Paladin with some pockets of mass amounts of healing, or Holy Paladin with massive burst damage from moment to moment. Biggest changes happening to Holy is Glimmer playstyle from Battle for Azeroth stays with you, but it doesn't feel quite as strong. That's maybe something for Blizzard to tune on the alpha, but playing Glimmer I felt like it wasn't nearly as strong as the trait version, but it still retains. And Aura Mastery is going to affect you depending on the aura that you use, with a lot more auras being added in the game, and Holy Paladins actually have quite a few choices of which auras to run. The most important thing you'll need to know for your Holy Paladin is how do you build Holy Power. That can be used from a couple of abilities like Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, but also using heals on Beacon of Light target. So your normal Holy Light or Flash heal will also generate Holy Power when you heal the tank. One of the biggest changes to some of the procs for your heals is with Holy Shock. Sometimes Holy Shock will give you a buff that would either increase the cast speed of Holy Light to be a faster cast or effectiveness of Flash of Light. Instead, this actually makes Flashlight a faster cast for emergency healing, or if you go for Holy Light, it will be a long but a very powerful cast, which is going to offset the playstyle slightly for Paladin, as it's kind of like the reverse of what you had in BFA. So planning for situations and planning for damage is going to be a little bit more important, but you still have instacast and quite punchy heals in order to deal with difficult and kind of up in your face reactive situations. There was one fight that was super overtuned that was really struggling on a Holy Paladin, unlike I struggled on any other healers, but I think it's mostly came down to the tuning on the alpha for Holy Paladins being quite low. But in situations that wasn't that specific boss fight, all the other mechanics I felt like could react to situations quite fast because all your instacast heals still do quite a bit. So what do you do with this Holy Power? Well, now you'll be using it on two abilities. The first one is going to be Word of Glory, which will be a efficient single target heal. The other ability you'll use your Holy Power on is Light of Dawn. And now you probably see a problem. Hold on. As a Holy Paladin, my AoE healing is reliant on Holy Power? In a sense, yes and no. I feel like Light of Dawn was an interesting ability in BFA, especially if you can proc multiple times over. Paladins right now in BFA mostly do AoE healing from Glimmer, and this change to Light of Dawn does feel weird. But I think that Blizzard is really trying to offset the healing from Light of Dawn being more as efficiency heal in AoE, and then Word of Glory is efficiency heal for single target, but not really like the massive heal, because most of your healing still comes from your direct cast. Again, could be one of those things on the alpha where Blizzard will actually flip it in reverse and make a change to it, but right now that's how it feels for the class. It doesn't feel too terrible. What does feel great for Paladin though is the toolkit of talents that you can really craft for your class to be either really bursty on healing or really sustain heavy, or maybe be even extra aggressive on damage. The talents you have can give you a lot of Holy Power back to back to back in massive bursts where you can really burst heal through your allies in the worst situations. So you can craft yourself to be more sustain heavy with procs, or maybe with certain abilities that will have a cooldown for 20-30 seconds, so you can intermittently have power, or go for the flat 3-minute cooldowns, massive amounts of healing whenever you want to. So this type of customization for Holy Paladin and how you can approach situations, I think is going to be very useful if you're someone who really likes to fiddle with your cooldowns. But Paladin always has been a class with a bit of aggression, especially in the recent expansion. They've gotten a little bit more bursty, and this class is definitely going to maintain that aggression. I mean, Hammer of Righteous being baseline for all Paladins and usable on execute targets, this thing really slams. And as you go in higher levels, during your wings, you can throw that hammer around as much as you want to. So as a Paladin, you can really step up and help out doing some hefty damage. Of course, there's still that talent that can make your wings into melee to add even more damage. So as a Paladin, if you want to play more of the offensive playstyle, Blizzard is definitely giving you far more toolkits than before. Honestly, I enjoyed the playstyle the most, just being a brawler and off-healing allies, and it kind of works, especially I think in Mythic Plus groups. If everybody can avoid damage as best as possible, a Paladin can put up quite a punch. I really do think this spec is looking good, and I think it's going to be carried by the fact that it has a massive talent tree with a variety of different abilities for a variety of different situations for you to deal with. I don't think Paladins are ever not going to have an answer for any type of fight. The next class on this list is going to be Restoration Shamans. Shamans in general have gotten a lot of toolkits from abilities like Chain Heal, Chain Lightning, Healing Stream Totem, Flame Tongue Weapon, Flame Shock, Frost Shock, Lightning Shield, all being brought to be baseline abilities. For a Restoration Shaman, that doesn't really feel all that different because a Battle Shaman has always been a concept in BFA, I think since BOD. Being able to do damage, especially in raid situations, and quite considerable damage, is something that's going to be carried over with the Restoration Shaman in the next expansion. And its toolkit for how you heal doesn't, for the most part, look all that different, although there are some notable things to mention. First of all, Earthshield comes back as a welcome addition to the baseline toolkit for Restoration Shamans. So the chicken nugget returns, as that's what I used to call it back in Cataclysm, when Restoration Shamans would drop it on the tank as it spins in the orbit. I always felt like it was a great ability for Restoration Shamans, and it was iconic. It was a class with a variety of shields. So it's a welcome addition and something to put on your tank. The biggest change I noticed with Restoration Shamans just from playing them is how your mana plays, and this one's going to be weird, but I kind of like it. Water Shield returns, and there was a lot of times in a dungeon where I would draw aggro from enemies or forget to put on my Water Shield, and I felt starved of mana. However, if I had Water Shield on, I didn't really feel mana problems. So that's something that's going to be weird for you to play as a Restoration Shaman. It's going to be something for you to maintain if you forgot the Water Shield and the importance of it from previous expansions. Speaking about mana Tide Totem makes a return. So if you're thinking of whether you want to bring a Restoration Shaman in a raid or not, Mana Tide Totem is going to provide extra mana for your party. And I think it's actually a little bit better in certain cases than the Holy Priest mana return. Summon a Mana Totem at the target caster for 8 seconds, granting 100% increased mana regen to the party and raid members within 15 yards. I feel like this ability is going to be another toolkit for your Restoration Shaman to play when it comes to mana management. So don't be like me, don't be an idiot, make sure to put on Water Shield and use that Mana Tide Totem. It has a fairly short-ish cooldown compared to some of the other abilities. Besides that, Restoration Shamans don't really feel all that different. You have a little bit of this offensive power, you have quite a bit of healing, and quite a variety of heals to deal with a variety of situations. I would say that for Restoration Shamans, it is still going to be one of those specs that I don't know how it's going to do in 5-man content. It is definitely still designed for big open raids. I think that's where it's really going to shine. So a lot of the changes that this spec is getting from a Shaman perspective, the Restoration Shaman isn't going to feel all too different. You do have a little bit more baseline damage opportunities, so I think that's going to be quite fun. And it looks like some of this Battle Shaman aesthetic is getting kind of baked into the spec, so if you want to be able to help out your allies, you definitely can. In a sense, you could play this like an Elemental Shaman with some massive off-healing on the side, which is probably the playstyle that I enjoyed quite a bit. But Restoration Shaman feels about the same. So if you had a huge fun playing BFA Restoration Shaman in Battle for Azeroth, then I think you'll like Restoration Shaman going to Shadowlands. Again, this is still early alpha, so with this spec, I could definitely see a couple changes here and there. But with the Mana Tide Totem, I think the spec might have just barely secured themselves a spot inside of most raids, if not all. Next spec we'll talk about is a Mistweaver Monk. They were actually quite enjoyable. This is the one healer that I didn't really play a lot in Battle for Azeroth. So in Shadowlands, in a way, this was kind of like the first time really trialing it. So I can't really say how different is it from Mistweaver. At least the Battle of Azeroth version of Mistweaver. But I can tell you it's definitely one of the more fun classes that I've played when it comes to healer. It's no surprise, I'm a DPS, and I like being able to get up a melee and do some damage. And with Mistweaver, I felt it was maybe an overtuned healer where the healing is so high that I could spend more time really pushing out DPS numbers. But with the way that the hots are, where it's a strong heal that just lasts quite a while, the big AoE that can build up if you take a certain talent, it gives you a lot of room and possibility to just really wail on the enemy, kicking, punching, and screaming your heart out while supplying quite a bit of healing to your allies. I like some of the emergency buttons you have, from your cocoon to renewal. I feel like both of them are good on a somewhat reasonable cooldown, but the amount of just throughput healing that a Mistweaver can do if someone's in trouble, you really can turn that mana into green numbers at a moment's notice if you're given the time. It's a class with a lot of mobility, but the class that also has to stand still to truly funnel heals into somebody. So that aesthetic can be kind of fun, but kind of not, depending on who you are. You have movement, but then you're kind of forced to turret heals into an ally when you really need heals. So if that's not something really for you, then maybe Restoration Druid will be more towards your flow. In this expansion, all monks have a celestial they summon. So as a healer monk, you summon Outlaw, who will normally bounce between allies and throw on them a heal. But you can go for Invoke Chi-Ji the Red Crane to get offensive. When you do damage, you heal allies around you, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I felt like being able to give monks baseline talents to alter their cooldowns in that way, kind of like how you would use essences to create that type of playstyle. It's something that definitely was a welcome addition into Shadowlands to just be something to talent into. Overall, I thought Mistweavers were quite good. And maybe it's just the type of tank that I played. Maybe Protection Paladins are insanely strong at self-healing. And I guess it depends on a tank-to-tank situation, but it definitely felt like monks were also overtuned on healing. So maybe my numbers here and my experience is going to be skewed. If you were to cut all my healing that I was doing by half, I feel like I would probably spend more time really channeling heals into allies, but it still was quite an enjoyable playstyle. It's a mixture of a bit of HOTS with some channeling, but also with some damage. But what I also enjoyed is some of the crowd control capability, with being able to drop Ring of Peace and Leg Sweep onto enemies in order to lock them down. And when Blizzard given Wall back, well, Fortify and Brew, back to all monk specs, you felt a little bit tanky if you ever were in a bad situation, giving you a little bit more meaningful choices, especially in that level 40 row with Healing Elixir, Diffuse Magic, and Dampen Harm. A couple other abilities have been added for monks, but they don't really feel quite as impactful. There's certain things like, for example, there's the ability of Expel Harm, and it's supposed to be able to heal you and an ally that you are channeling into if you are healing someone, and it's supposed to heal the both of you, but that ability seems to heal for nothing and costs way too much mana, so I can't really say anything notable about that. However, Touch of Death is definitely a welcome addition. It allows you to either instantly kill a non-elite boss, or I guess in some cases it could be an elite enemy, depending on their health, or do quite a large chunk of damage to a boss when they're low enough on health, based on your health percentage, to also spawn healing spheres. In Mythic Plus content in certain raid fights, this would be one enemy that's super annoying, maybe with like an enrage mechanic as they get low on health, they could just take out of the game when they're low enough. Also, it can be used on a boss fight and throughout the fight as well during specific situations to spawn healing spheres that your DPS or tanks can pick up for emergency heals. So maybe there's going to be some play for that when it comes to the monk. But I really like the combination of the damage playstyle with Invoke Chi-Ji the Red Crane that was added, which was just from Outlaw into Red Crane, allowing you to do more damage. The mobility the spec has is quite nice. It doesn't really have any tools that some of the other specs have gotten to make it like a must-have inside of raids, like any kind of mana play or any kind of abilities that they can provide to help allies. So that might feel maybe a little bit weird when it comes to playing monk. You don't really bring something that a raid group can use. So maybe that's some shaky ground that some of you guys might have to consider when it comes to picking up a healer. But this one felt like a joy. Maybe it was super overtuned on healing, but it definitely felt super fun and flavorful. Then we have the Disciplined Priest, and Disciplined Priest has been the healer that I decided to pick up in Battle for Azeroth. Of course, I would pick up one of the harder healers in the game, with one of the hardest skill ceilings and a little bit of a healing curve to it. It's a spec that kind of fuses damage and healing together into a interesting combination to create a very unique class that isn't really limited by cooldowns. Disciplined Priest can do quite a bit of AoE healing, especially in raid situations, burning through all that mana by popping atonements on everybody and blasting the enemy. But they can also do quite a bit of healing as well, but not nearly as strong as some of the other classes. So this mixture of damage and healing is kind of how they play the game. And that one is something that is still familiar in this expansion. As I mentioned with the Holy Priest, there's a variety of more abilities being added, like Mind Blast, which is going to be different for Disciplined Priest. Mind Blast isn't going to be all damage. portion of it is going to be direct damage to the enemy, and then another portion is going to be prevent certain amount of damage on the target. So instead of smiting the enemy over and over and over, you'll probably go for a mind blast, make sure to dot him up, maybe hit him with a Shadow Word Death, and you can use the rest of the time to either smite if you don't have no one to heal, or you'll Shadowman people if they need some healing. So that's going to be an ability to be added to the cooldown as the priest you're going to be playing. I still feel like the healing for Discipline Priest is going to be very unique to set up, because you don't really have burst healing as a baseline toolkit. You do have damage, which can also provide healing. So I feel like you're going to do this whole dot everybody up and then really spam heals in emergency situation and utilize your damage reduction elements in order to survive mechanics, which if you played Disc Priest before, you might be used to it, but definitely not a reactive healer. You're going to need to know what you're stepping into. So unlike the other healers that I talked about, which can deal with emergency situations, I feel like Discipline Priest is the one that can't really, but that doesn't make it worse than the other specs. It simply means that it didn't really change in that regard going into Shadowlands, which if you are aware of how the situations go, I feel like the Shadowlands tools they're giving you in the next expansion can make you even stronger healer if you know what to expect and know when to really ramp up your damage to ramp up your healing. But Discipline Priest, for the most part, doesn't really feel all too different. Like Holy Priest, Discipline Priest also brings Power Infusion, which will be reward and can be used on allies to give them quite a bit of a haste buff if they need to do more damage. It can also be used on you or another healer if they're willing to put up healing. So that's going to be quite a good utility to bring into a group when it comes to playing your Discipline Priest. One thing that I felt like Disc Priests were having a hard time with is the AoE damage. I know it's a Disc Priest, it's a healer, but yeah, AoE damage was a little shaky. So they added Mind Seer that works now with all atonements. So healing with atonements in AoE with Mind Seer feels so cheese, but surprisingly quite good. As for the rest of it, Discipline Priest has mostly the same tools. You're going to be that healer that brings quite a bit of damage reduction. You're going to bring the Dome, Pain Suppression, and the damage with a variety of talents. There are some talent changes like Shadow Covenant, but last time I looked at it, it didn't work. So I don't know if Blizzard is going to redesign it or revert it back to the original Shadow Covenant. So I didn't really want to make a big deal about it in this video. However, if you enjoyed the current playstyle of Disc Priest, the skill ceiling and the skill curve for this spec, I think you will like Disc Priest. It's quite enjoyable, quite fun, and I think certain Covenant playstyles and abilities, which I didn't really cover much in this video, but I think some of the Priest ones could be quite good to supplement for some of the weaknesses that a Disc Priest might bring into a dungeon or a raid. Now, I didn't really talk about Covenant abilities for each healer because these are still going through changes, and we still don't know exactly how Blizzard is going to adjust Covenant abilities. Maybe there'll be something that we can choose from talent to talent, or maybe Blizzard will be able to balance Covenant abilities, but those shouldn't be reflective of the healers because we never really know where the meta is going to go. All I wanted to do in this video is to explain to you guys what it felt like to play every single one of the healers. None of them felt really bad. None of them really felt like probably the most broken thing in the world. There are certain healers that have gotten some changes that I'm a huge fan of, and I'm mostly speaking from like a DPS standpoint because I like doing damage, but certain healers felt good and felt ready for any situation. Certain healers definitely have a bit of a learning curve. Certain healers have mechanics that I'm enjoying and mechanics that I don't really like that much, and a lot of it is really hard to sift through without really saying this is bad or good, because the damage and the healing numbers are always getting adjusted on the alpha. One day a class could be healing for a ton, the next day it could heal for nothing. So I tried to make this video in terms of what it feels like to play these classes rather than are they good right now, because right now the version of the alpha definitely is going to be determining any sort of rating meta in the future to come. But definitely a lot of interesting changes to consider when it comes to picking up your healer for the next expansion. And I know some of you guys will play the best healer for certain situations, but when it comes to choosing a healer and the playstyle that you favor and like, well, hopefully this video gave you a little bit more of an idea what these classes are shaping up to be in the early version of Shadowlands Alpha. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know which healer specs you enjoyed and which ones you didn't, and let me know reasons why down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.